Welcome to Learning Photography with Duck. Here's your host, Duck.
Alrighty, welcome everybody to another edition of Learn Photography with Duck. I want to thank you all for joining me tonight on our new time at 6:30 by popular request from people from last week's workshop where they said, you know what, if we can start a little bit later, it allows us to have dinner, get some work stuff out of the way, and then we can relax into this. And I said, no problem, sounds good. So hopefully the new time works for everybody. Today, hey, there's Bill. I knew you'd be stepping in somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so
I always step in something.
Ain't that the truth? I'm the same way.
Yes. Can I give a plug? North Haven Camera Club.
Sure. Why not?
North Haven Camera Club tomorrow night. If you don't have an email, if you're not on the club's email address, I don't think it's out there on the Facebook page.
Probably not.
It's not on the face. I think they did not want to make it public. If anybody here wants to go to my presentation at 7 o'clock tomorrow night on photojournalism, and if you are not a member of North Haven Camera Club, and if you did not get the email about it, send me an email at bill06492@yahoo.com, and I'll send you the link. That's bill06492@yahoo.com.
Okay.
Awesome. Are you coming, Duck?
I am going to try. I had some previous commitment that looks like it might change, so I might be able to make it after all. So.
Okay. Did you get the email? Are you on the email list?
I don't think so.
I'll send it to you.
All right. Appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. So.
Sorry, excuse me, Doc. Bill, did you just want to put it in the chat?
Oh yeah, actually, that's not even a bad idea.
Should I put in the chat, Duck?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I will. Hold on a second. I'm going to have to. Duck, why don't you go ahead and say what you have to say, and I will do to my email and copy and paste and all that.
No problem. All right. So today's lesson is going to be, we're going to be delving pretty deeply into develop export presets. All right. So basically we've covered a lot of, the import presets. We went over some develop presets in order to speed up your workflow a little bit. And now, after you've edited those images and you want to go out and share those images, we're going to discuss the presets that you can use to facilitate the export of your images in order to keep a consistent look. Okay? So we're going to be getting into a lot of formatting information. We're also going to be delving into some of the organizational aspects of exports that most people don't really think about, as well as just the actual technical aspect of writing a preset. So the first thing I want to do is I want to share with you, where is this? I'm going to copy this link, and I'm going to drop this into the chat as well. Let's see, where's my chat window? Where is my chat window? Okay, why am I not seeing my chat?
For me, it's at the bottom with participants and reactions, but I don't know when you share your screen where it goes.
Yeah, what?
When I screen share at work, it's at the top.
Huh, this is weird. Oh, this is weird. You know, I don't think I've ever had to... Oh, there's my chat right there. All right. There it is. Okay. So this is a link to a Google Doc. Feel free to go ahead and download it at your convenience. Or if you think you can just follow along, on a scrap piece of paper, that's fine as well. I just put together this worksheet in order to, make it a little bit easier for you guys. So what I'd like to do is kind of sort of explain a little bit about what the purpose of the worksheet is, so that as we get in further into the lesson, you kind of get a sense of what all this means. When we edit an image, we want to then take that image and share it to the world. We want to share it, to our friends and family. We may want to print it. We may want to post it on Facebook or Instagram or on Twitter or on, whatever your portfolio site. You want to share it. And the thing is that depending on where you're going to share that image to, that endpoint may have a certain criteria to file size, pixel density, color space, and so on. So you want to make sure that when you export your image, you're not exporting something that's either too small or overly large that you just don't need. All right. For example, one of the biggest concerns with a lot of beginner photographers is, well, I want to share it on Facebook, but I'm afraid that somebody is going to steal my images, which is a legitimate, way of thinking. Nobody wants to be spending a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of expense into gear, to have just somebody come by and say, oh, I like that, I'm taking it. All right. But one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of beginners make is that, well, one, a lot of people tend to be afraid of shooting raw because they don't know how to process a raw file. So they shoot in JPEG. And then they take that native file from their camera at full resolution and then go ahead and post it on Facebook at the full resolution. So in essence, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, here's everything, go ahead and take it. In essence, all right? There are some unscrupulous people out there. The downside to that, and it's been a point of contention with creative people for a long time with Facebook, is that Facebook will strip out a lot of the EXIF metadata from a file. I don't know the full reason why. I can only speculate that part of it is that they strip out a lot of the metadata in order to control any kind of Trojan viral data, being embedded into an image, which is possible, and then being spread through their network. So what they do is they'll strip out all the metadata. That way, if there's anything, any Trojans, programs embedded in it, it gets stripped out. The downside, along with that, it strips out all your creative metadata. So if you ever looked at some of these images from Facebook, you really won't find what kind of camera took it and things like that. They have said that they are looking into finding a solution around it, but who knows? But the metadata is a piece of information that gets embedded in your image that links you as the creator of that image. So it's a great putting a watermark on it. Okay. But beside the point, what you're basically doing by just uploading a full resolution image is you're giving a very large, very printable, very usable image that anybody can take and use for their purposes. So one of the things that has always been recommended is when you upload to a platform, you want to upload the bare minimum that will make your image pleasing to look at without crossing that border into, oh yeah, I can very easily steal it and make copies of this. All right. So now if we think about the technology that we're using to view images on Facebook, most of us are looking at Facebook either through a desktop screen or through a smartphone. All right. And the thing is, an image, no matter how large it is always going to get sized down to fit the viewport of whatever system you are looking through. All right. So for example, your desktop, the average screen size, all right, and that's not counting the extra wide screens or the older, narrower screens. I'm talking about the overall general size that most people can go to a store and buy is 1920 by 1080, which is considered HD dimensions. Okay, so the television that you watch, unless it's a 4K television, most HD televisions are 1920 by 1080 pixels. All right. And a lot of people think, wow, that big 60-inch screen TV that I have is only 1920 pixels wide. Absolutely. That's HD. If you go into 4K, then you're looking at a much bigger dimension. But there aren't very many 4K screens out there right now. But the thing is, you have 1920 by 1080 on your screen, all right? But if you're looking at an image within like Facebook, all right, it's only occupying a small, maybe 20% space on your screen. And then when you click on it to expand it, even then, it's only taking up maybe 50 to 60% of that screen size. Very, very seldom will Facebook present an image at 1920 by 1080. You would actually have to, click on it and open up in its own tab, et cetera, to circumvent it in order to be able to see it at the full HD resolution. So that should inform you that literally all your images that you are sending out to be viewed on the internet, whatever platform, probably should not be larger than 1920 by 1080 pixels. Because no matter what, your image is never going to be viewed at larger than that. Make sense? All right. The only time you need dimensions larger than the 1920 by 1080 is if you're sending your image to be printed. All right. And at that point, the math behind it and the output behind it is totally different. It's a totally different animal. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to concentrate mainly on the most popular ways that we as photographers share our images, and that's through social media. All right. I am going to touch base on exports for print. All right. But that's going to vary slightly according to where you are printing as well. So While we'll be touching on it, that's a whole different package that's got its own set of rules that we probably won't get into today. All right. All right. So the other reason for this particular worksheet is to get you organized in your workflow so that when you spit out a file to be shared, you know exactly where it went and what its purpose is. Okay? All right, so the worksheet has two sections. The first one is to determine the use. Okay? Where are your images going to go in order for you to share it? And the second part is what dimensions is that use usually recommended. Okay? All right, so the first part is what is it that you take your photos for? Is it for your own personal enjoyment or is it for business? Okay? Because, like for example, for myself, I do both, all right? And you can check both. I will take photos for my own personal reasons, whether it's taking photos of my grandkids or, you know, going out with you guys on a, you know, either a shooting event or, you know, a camera club get together, whatever the reason, that's for my own personal enjoyment. Those images are going to be treated slightly different than images that I take for a client. All right. When my workflow for client work needs to be a little stricter in order to have a certain kind of redundancy to the backup system, it has to have a certain checks and balances, all right, that I normally don't do with my own personal images. So understanding what the image is going to be used for helps instruct me as to the workflow, all right, and that workflow incorporates where I am storing images and its derivatives, okay? So knowing this will help you moving forward through this particular workflow, all right? The other piece of information we need to know is who are your viewers? Who's the end, the person who is ultimately going to be looking at your photos? Who are they? All right. Again, if it's just you, you know, you're taking photos for your own private enjoyment and nobody's ever going to see it, then at this point, who cares what you do with them? You can keep, you know, you can print them out whatever way you want. However, even there, all right, like for example, for me, for my own private use and my own private enjoyment, I tend to create desktop wallpapers of some of my images, the ones that I really, really love looking at over and over. I have it set up as a desktop wallpaper. And I mean, I have hundreds of them and they're constantly rotating. So every time I see my desktop, it's always usually something different. All right. Nobody's ever going to see some of those images. I have images of my grandkids in there. I have images, you know, that I've taken that I've probably never shared on Facebook, you know, because they're just for my own private enjoyment. All right. Likewise, you probably take images that you only share with a small, close set of friends and family members. All right. So they're going to be segregated into their own little space, all right, that doesn't see the light of day to the general public. All right. Likewise, if you're creating images for a specific client, more than likely you're not going to be sharing those on a public forum. All right. Not unless you get permission from your client. Okay. And of course, you may be creating work. You know, if you're using photography for some form of income, occasionally you get the projects that are to try to entice a potential client. All right, so that's going to have a life of its own. All right. All right, so understanding who your target audience is will help dictate that part of the workflow. All right. So we're going to get into workflow, not just the export presets. Okay. All right. The second part of the worksheet is what output formats do you currently use? All right. And you're going to need to put a little bit of, thought into this and try to think about where are you sharing your images now? All right. And list them all. All right. Do you share them on Facebook? Do you share them on Pinterest? Do you share them on Instagram? Do you send them out through emails? All right. Do you just post them to like a Flickr or a SmugMug account or what's that other some of those photo sites? Take an inventory of where your images are going. All right. And the part two of that is if you are printing any images. Okay. Are you printing them to hang on your wall? Or are you printing them to sell at some kind of artist's market? Okay. There's a lot of photographers that will take photos, all right, print them into, hard copies, put them into a cellophane, and then on the weekend at the crafts fairs and the, artists markets, they'll sell prints. All right. It's a great way of making a little extra income. All right. So list that as well. You want to know exactly where your images are going. All right. The other thing you want to take an inventory on is when you share these, what size are you currently exporting at? All right. Write that down. All right. And also note if you are attaching a watermark or not. All right. Because this will all help you inform some things. And one of the things that it will let you know is if there's any duplication. All right. So, for example, you say, well, I see that I am sending out a 1920 by 1080 with a watermark that I use for Facebook. All right. And I'm also spitting one out at close to that size. Maybe it's 1200. All right. That's going to Pinterest or Instagram. All right. By seeing everything in the list, you can say, well, this one, and this one all share very common features. Maybe I can bundle those three up into a single export. All right. So having it visible on a worksheet allows you to identify any duplication. Okay. Make sense? Hopefully. All right. All right. So I recommend you downloading the worksheet, saving it, printing it out, and then just take a few minutes and run through it. You don't have to do it right now. This is something that you can do on your own time later on, but it will come in handy. Now, the next thing I want to discuss is part of the workflow is how does it incorporate into your physical system? All right. Now, in the past, I've mentioned that when you take your images off your camera and bring them into Lightroom, you want to put all your images into a central location so that you can always find where your images are, rather than being all over the place. And for example, what I do is I have an external, a secondary internal drive. It's a 4 terabyte drive, and on that drive, you can see I actually have a temporary folder. This is a client folder I'm currently working on, but I have my photos and my videos. All right, because now that I'm doing YouTube stuff, I'm generating videos. All my videos that I generate are going into this My Videos folder. And all my photos that I take with my cameras go into My Photos folder. All right, and you can see right here, this is my entire library in that one folder. I know exactly where all my images are. All right, now, mind you, this is my main catalog. This is my main drive. I do have backups that replicate this. So if anything goes wrong with this particular drive, I have backups. All right. Just a little side note. We're not going to get into backups right now. We're just getting into this. Okay. And each one of these folders is a purpose-driven folder. All right. Now, this isn't about organizing your workflow on this end. It's about organizing your workflow on the export. All right. I just want you to know that your organization should be somewhat consistent. Now, the reason I bring this particular folder up is because this is a separate folder than the Photos folder that comes pre-packaged with your operating system. Whether you're on Windows or whether you're on a Mac, those two OSs have their own little independent folder called My Photos, or just Photos, or Pictures maybe. All right. And so this folder here is separate from my OS folder. Okay. So when I first set up my library, I made sure that I created my own structure for my images separate from the operating system structure. Okay. This way I know exactly where all my pictures are within one click of a folder. All right. So here's my hard drive. There's my Photos folder. It's one level down. All right. Now, on the sidebar, all right, whether you're working with PC or Mac, they both have the same styling. On the sidebar, you're going to see some default folders. One's a Documents folder, a Downloads folder, a Music folder, a Pictures folder, and a Videos folder. All right. Now, when people were first setting up their libraries, I would warn them, don't put your main library into that folder. That's a system folder. That folder is buried several layers down. So if you need to get to that folder from outside of this little sidebar, all right, you're going to have a hard time. All right. So in order to find this pictures file, all right, the shortcut address is this PC pictures. But in actuality, if we were to explore it, okay, it's actually in your main drive, users, owner, all right? And there it is, documents, downloads, pictures, videos, all right? So it's several layers deep, all right? That's why I don't like it for my main catalog storage. However, it's a perfect location for all my exports, all right? And that's what I use it for. So all my exports go into this pictures file. All right. Now, because it's a Windows or Mac default file or folder, I should say. All right. It's going to be a kind of like a standard dumping site for lots of photos or images. Okay. So I can throw stuff in here that is not even related to just my photography. Other things can go in here. All right. So again, we want to keep things a little bit segregated and organized. All right. You don't want an office where you have piles and piles and piles of different types of paper and you say, oh, where did I put that? Let me look in this pile. No, maybe it's in this pile. You don't want a cluttered office like that. You want to be able to go open up a drawer, say, here it is, and you got it. You know exactly where you put it. That's the same thing here, all right? So I have a folder called Lightroom Exports. And what's in this folder? Well, guess what? All you got to do is read the label and you know exactly what's in that folder, all right? Everything that I export from Lightroom goes into that folder, all right? Now, how you organize that particular folder is going to be determined by how you use Lightroom and where your images go, all right? So a quick view, you can see that I have folders for stock photography. I have folders for my blog. I have client folder. What goes in my clients folder? Very easy. All my client work. Every single client that I am exporting for goes into that folder. That way I know exactly where to go. All right. My social media. All right. And my Unitas photography. All right. There's no question about what goes into those folders. So that when I am in Lightroom and I kick something out, and if it's for social media, all I got to do is come here and I know where that image is. Make sense? All right. All right. So this.
Hey, Doc.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Nancy. So when you export these, you're putting them on the hard drive of your computer. I guess I'm
Correct.
a little surprised you're doing that because it's not taking up storage space and potentially making the computer slow down. Or
Yep.
I'm surprised you're putting them on an external drive.
Thank you for mentioning that. I'm going to open up some of these. Here's my blog. What's in it?
Nothing. It's empty.
It's empty. But if you go to my blog, you're going to see all kinds of photos.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Here's another one. My DeviantArt. I have thousands of photos on my DeviantArt site. You don't see a single one here.
Okay.
All right. For print, I got pictures hanging on my wall all over my house of my own photography. None of them are here. All right.
So you're taking them all out. You're deleting them after you.
Yeah. So these are all temporary holding sites.
Okay.
All right. And some of these I haven't even cleared out. Some of these I just been kind of holding on to a little bit. I usually hold on to a set of exports for a while because, like, for example, the one that says Unitas Photography. All right. Those are images that eventually end up on my Unitas Photography site. All right. And this includes event photos that I take. You know, like I do, I shoot a lot of like ribbon cuttings and open houses. All right. So what I'll do is I'll export it to there. I then take it and upload it to my my website. All right. However, because I'm dealing with several people, sometimes they'll say, hey, can you send me such and such a photo? It's easier for me to go to my hard drive and send out that photo than to go to my website, download it, and then send it out. Make sense?
Yeah, it does.
All right.
I was curious. I knew some of the folders were empty, and I was wondering what you were doing. But it makes sense if you keep them in there for a little bit of time and then
Yeah.
get rid of them. We should have them.
Question is an awesome question, and I'll tell you why. There's a certain mindset in a lot of beginners that for some reason they have this hang up about deleting images. Oh my God, I've put all this work into editing. I've created this beautiful picture. Here's the output. I got to hold on to it forever and ever and ever. And a lot of times I'm like, why? You have the original. If you need it, this is a copy. Why are you holding on to a copy if you have the original? All right. If you need another copy, just go back to the original and spit out a new one.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
But you know what? It is a real hang up in a lot of people, and it's probably a leftover from the older days. All right. Before we had Lightroom, which was a non-destructive editing process. Back in the day, editing photos was a very destructive process. And you needed to make duplicates in order not to overwrite, the original. All right. So I can understand that mentality being a leftover of that process. But, with Lightroom, there's no reason to hang on to that. Okay. It is scary for a lot of people to just hit the delete button, but once you do it a couple times.
I have another question about
Sure.
that. So, like, you put something into your stock folder after a year or so, and you've already deleted it. So, somebody calls you and wants a copy of that. So you go back to the original, then you just do a second export of
Correct.
whatever your preset for the stocks are?
Yeah. Yeah, because everything's saved in my Lightroom library.
So, but you didn't save that size of JPEG. You just went back, and now you're exporting it again.
Correct.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. So, and there is where having an export preset comes into play, because I don't have to remember what I did. It's saved in the preset. All right. So, for example, let's take, for example, I shoot a lot of events. All right. And I shoot events for different people, different organizations. But if you look at my events folder, all the images are the exact same size. All right. Because I use the same preset. All right. So a photo that I export to my my current event folder. Let's say I did a ribbon cutting yesterday. I'll export those images. If I go back 5 years to an event I did 5 years ago, it's going to be the same size. All right. The only reason it would change is if the criteria needed for the end results for some reason changed. Okay. That would be the only reason. All right. For example, my screens are HD screens, 1920 by 1080. All right. So I have a preset that spits out images to 1920 by 1080 and puts it into a folder specifically for my my wallpapers. All right. Let's say over Christmas, I decide, well, I'm going to upgrade and I'm going to get myself 2 HD screens. All right. Now, all of a sudden, every single one of those wallpapers is going to look like a little postage stamp on an HD screen. Change that one preset and kick everything back out to the same folder, overwrite everything at the new size. All right. So it makes the end results a lot easier to deal with. All right. So there's an example of where, the needs of the end results will alter a particular preset. Okay. All right. But the worksheet will help you identify what end results you currently need. All right. Now, the other thing is, clients come and go, all right, and client needs change, all right. So when we get into the actual Lightroom, I'll actually show you this. I create presets that are client specific, and then when I'm done with that project or done with the client, I'll get rid of the presets. I don't need them hanging around, If push comes to shove and 2 years down the road they hire me again, I just recreate the presets or create new ones according to their current needs, not their past needs. All right? Okay. Everybody with me so far? All right. We've kind of delved a little bit into the organizational and workflow aspects of it. Let's now take a look at the actual mechanics of it. All right. Now, when we are developing an image, and here we're in the develop module. All right. And over on the left-hand side, we actually have our develop presets, which if we open up, we can see all our developed presets. Okay. What we cannot see is a nice handy little list like this of all our export presets. In order to access our export presets, we have to initiate an export. Okay. All right. What I do? Okay. So to initiate an export, we could either right-click on the image that we want to export, or we can go to photo. Let's see, where is it? I hardly ever use this, so excuse me if I'm a little lost here. Photo. Where is it? See, this is what happens when you don't use a particular feature. Oh yeah, here it is. File, export. All right. Export with previous, export with presets. Okay. And then export as catalog. We'll touch base on those in a little bit. But the first three, export with previous, and export with presets, are the ones we're gonna pretty much talk about today. All right. Now, the export with previous, I find its use tends to be a little glitchy. All right. The purpose of the export with previous is, let's say you're working on a project and you're kicking out the occasional image as an export. Okay. So let's say you're working on a client, you're going through 150 images and you export 10 of them. All right. And then, half an hour later, you have 10 more you want to export. You just select those 10. You can just go with export with previous, and it's supposed to export with whatever settings you used previously. However, I find that sometimes, for some reason, it messes up. all right, it'll either put it into a different folder that you didn't intend, or usually that's the error that I find. It puts it someplace where you didn't want it to be, all right? So I hardly ever use the export with presets just because for me, I find it a little too glitchy, okay? The export for preset, I use this for the presets that are rock solid, all right? And what I mean by that is that whatever I built into the preset, nothing on that preset is going to change, all right? Now, you're probably saying, well, isn't that what all the presets are supposed to be doing? It says, aha, you can modify a preset prior to going out, all right? And like, for example, your develop presets. A lot of the develop presets tend to be presets that are designed to get you started in a particular look that you then augment and modify to complete the look that you're looking to get. So it's not a one-click stop, you're done with your develop presets. You click on it and then you modify it. Well, the same thing can be done with an export preset, all right? So for example, with my client work, all right, all my clients get dumped into a client folder, but I have different clients, all right? So at that point, I'll go to the regular export, the first one, all right, which is going to bring up a dialog box, all right? And from there, I can pick any one of these client presets and then modify it before I kick it out, all right? And it's usually something like I will put it into a subfolder with that client's name. So rather than dumping it into my client folder, you know, all mixed in with different client work, I will create on export a client-specific folder, all right, that I really don't need to create a preset for, all right? I do have long-term clients that I will, all right, so for example, you'll see one here, Enfield Tech, all right? This is a long-standing client that I do work for, so that one is a standalone, all right? But these other at products on white 2000 and product on whites 3000, those two I will put into a subfolder, and I'll explain this later. I'll put into a subfolder with that client's name, so that after I've done the export, I open up my file browser, I go to my clients folder, because that's my client stuff, all in that one folder. I look for that client name, and there it is. I then send those images out. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. All right. Now, Lightroom comes with a few presets. All right. Burn full-size JPEGs, and this is nobody burns CDs anymore, it seems. So this is a hangout from back in the day, all right? But it's got a couple of good ones. The export to DNG, all right? Now, DNG is a digital negative. It's Adobe's open source raw format, all right? And a lot of people who share their images with other creatives, or you know, whether it's you're sending it out for another photo editor, right, that works with Adobe products, you can convert it to a DNG and it plays nice with Adobe products, all right, rather than sending out a native Canon or a native Nikon file, all right. And you have the old Hangout for email. They'll probably eventually get rid of that one. and for email that places it onto your hard drive. Now, beyond that, everything else you can custom create. All right. And just like your develop presets, you can organize them into folders. Okay. So in my case, here I have a client-specific folder that has, let me close that, that has a bunch of presets, all right, that I use for my current client. Once I'm done with this project, this client preset list will disappear, okay? I have a generic clients folder, all right, that I will put, generic exports that I can use across the board with all my clients, all right? So for example, I do a lot of photography on white. A lot of these are done to Amazon specifications. So I have a preset specific for Amazon styled exports. Doesn't matter who the client is, they're going to get that. All right. Like I said, I do some images for DeviantArt, so I have a preset for that. I have preset for my stock photography or for print. And then, of course, the ones that we're going to be talking about is creating presets for your social media. All right. Here I have two that generate avatars. All right. I'm constantly updating my avatars on social media, whether it's my LinkedIn profile picture, my Facebook profile picture, whatever profile picture. I have presets because, I'm constantly changing those up. Okay. So I have two presets depending on the size that is requested by the end use. All right. I have one for generating Facebook cover photos. I have I have two for the forums that I participate in. All right. And then, of course, full screen and a slightly smaller, not quite HD image for Facebook. All right. And the one thing I want you to notice, and this is going to be key for your presets, is that you want to give the presets a name that makes sense and informs you as to what the end result is. Okay? So for me, my criteria is, what's the image going to be used for? What size am I generating? And is it branded with my company information? All right. Meaning, does it have a watermark? All right. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with watermarks. All right. The majority of the work that I put out into the public does not have a watermark. However, I will put it on stuff that goes into Facebook because images on Facebook tend to just float away. All right. They get picked up and shared by friends and family and God knows what. All right. So those images I want branded with my website address so that if somebody comes across it, all right, that's been shared by somebody else who shared it from somebody else who shared it from somebody else, it can still get back to me. Because again, remember, Facebook strips out all the metadata. So all that nice information, my website, my phone number, my name, all right, all that metadata that I embedded into that photograph, Facebook says, we don't need it. So it strips it out. All right. So I have to rely on the watermark in order for people to find me through Facebook. When I post to a forum, all right, it's locked to my account. All right. It's my post has my information on it. My post has that picture attached to it. All right. If somebody sees my picture in a post on a forum, all they got to do is look at that little sidebar and figure out who I am and how to get a hold of me. So at that point, it becomes redundant. Likewise, all my portfolio images on my website are not branded. Why? Because my website is branded. Why would somebody go to my website and see Unitas Photography in the corner and then on every single image they're looking at getting in the way? Doesn't make sense. All right. So those are pretty much the 3 or 4 pieces of information that I want to track in the name of a preset. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. All right. Now, the other thing is many of these categories, all right, you can call them folders, you can call them categories. They're basically folders, all right. They tend to be linked to a physical folder on my hard drive, all right, for the most part. There is some differences, like clients. All right. All the presets in my clients folder on Lightroom get dumped into a clients folder on my hard drive. All right. So I can very easily make the correlation. It's going to a client. It's going to end up in a client folder. All right. All right. And again, that's why that worksheet comes in handy. All right. Okay. Any questions so far? I put Don to sleep. Poor Don. He's listening. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? We're good?
Looking down.
I got one of those voices. I know. I'm working on it. All right. So let's get into actually building a preset. All right. And what we'll do is, if you want to follow along, we're going to build a preset that is going to export your image to share on Facebook. All right? Okay. So we'll just take a random photo here. What the heck? There we go. Let's say I want to share this on Facebook and my screen is flickering. Having a hard time catching up. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is we need to open up that export dialog box. All right, so again, we can go to File, Export, or we can right click on the photo and click on Export, and then at the very top of this list is the export dialog box. Everything below that are your presets. So you can go right down the list and actually select one of your presets. Or you can also do it from the film strip at the bottom. File, Export, all the way to the top. Click on the Export. All right. That brings up this dialog box. And there are, let me close this up and let me close this up. All right, just to make things a little bit easier. And there are 2 parts to this. The column on the left are all your current presets and all their folders. All right. Now, one thing you'll notice, and this is a recent development that I think is brilliant, there are little check boxes alongside all these presets. So you can export to multiple folders at different sizes with different end results in one shot. All you got to do is select what exports you want to send out to. All right. So that's a nice feature. All right. In this case, what we want to do is we want to start from scratch and just create a preset. And for that, we need to go to the right side of this dialog box. And you can see that there are several tabs or panels that you can open up. And what we're just going to go down top to bottom, and I'll explain what they all mean. The first one is your export location. Okay? Export location. This is when Lightroom configures your export and spits it out, where on your hard drive is it going to put it? Okay? Now we've already established I'm putting it into my default pictures folder that came with Windows, but I'm putting it into a specific folder labeled Lightroom exports. You can call it whatever you want. I like them all in one space, so I know exactly where to go to find my images. Okay? So the first thing that it asks for is, where do you want to send it? All right. You can specify a folder. All right. You can put it into the same folder that your original image is. I'm not a fan of that. All right. Some people do this. They'll put their JPEGs exports in the same folder that they have the raw files. I hate that because it just clutters that folder beyond belief. All right. And if your exports share the same file name, all right, and you want the same file name with two different sizes, one's gonna overwrite the other. So it doesn't make sense. All right. You can also
I do mine in the same folder, but I create a subfolder for Facebook size and print size and that sort of thing.
Okay. Yep. You can do that. All right. Again, not that your system is wrong. If it works for you, use it. However, I've been where you are. I used to have a folder called saved under each and every single one. The problem I found out is when I wanted to then share it, I have to dig down, find it, search through that whole list of all the exports for that one file that I want to share on Facebook. It was a big hassle for me, and I said, there's got to be an easier way. All right. So what I'm showing you here has gone through that metamorphosis, all right, of homogenizing all my images in one spot. Okay. I found that very awkward. I made the change a long time ago. So, take it for what it is, as a suggestion. You work it to your workflow that works best for you, makes sense for you, because ultimately it's your system. You're going to be using it. All right. So just don't take my word at face value. All right. All right. So for you, the option to put it into the same folder, all right, may work. At that point, you can do whatever you want with it. Okay. I don't like it. All right. Other options, you can send it to your desktop. All right. So this is great for those one-ofs that you may want to share in an email. All right. It drops it on your desktop. You send it out through your email. You delete it off your desktop and you're good to go. Okay. You can send them to your documents folder. Why? Who knows? A user folder, your videos folder, or your pictures folder. All right. So if, for me, my images go out like spider webs in all different directions. All right. You may be in a position where, your images only go 1 or 2 or 3 different places. So you don't need all these folders. And just dump it into your main pictures folder. All right? Make it easy for yourself. All right? The purpose of this is to be able to find your export and then complete the workflow by uploading it. All right? Okay. So this allows you to select. All right? Me, I tend to go with the very specific folder. All right. And I have one of 2 places that I will send it out depending on the use. But most of them will go into the pictures, the default pictures folder that comes with my OS, and then into a folder called Lightroom Exports. Okay. And there, all right, I have a folder called Social Media. All right. So I'll go ahead and click on that, select a folder. All right. And for me, social media is all inclusive. All right. It's Facebook, it's Twitter, it's Instagram, it's LinkedIn. All right. I don't care which one of those platforms I'm sharing at. I'm sharing the exact same image at the exact same size. So I don't need to make multiple exports for each one of those. All right. You can, if you find that, you know what, for Facebook, I like, the extra wide, but for Instagram, I like that more of that square crop. All right. At that point, you can separate it according to your needs. All right. Me, it's all inclusive. I don't want to get into the minutia of separating things. One image covers all 4. Makes my life easier. All right. So I will keep it into that main social media folder. Okay. Now, so you can, all right. The next one is put into a subfolder. This is great. Like for my clients, if I want to designate a subfolder on export, I can just type it in and it's going to automatically create that subfolder if it's not already there. It's going to create it and dump it into that folder. And then when I'm done, I just get rid of the image and the folder and I'm done. All right. And then you have the option to add your export back into your catalog. Again, I have no need for that, but some people may. All right. Once I'm done editing an image, I don't need it back in Lightroom because I'm not going to edit it anymore. If I want to edit it, I'll go back to the original and edit some more. All right. So I usually do not do anything with adding it back into this catalog, except there is an exception for one reason and one reason only. I maintain a textures library. All right. And for those of you in the North Haven Camera Club, we're actually going to get into this on that in January. All right. I may take portions of an image that I find this would look great in a textures library. I need that texture library to be accessible as a JPEG from Photoshop. All right. Without going into Lightroom. All right. So then I will add it back into my catalog in my textures library. Okay. All right. So that's the only reason I use it. All right. So the first thing is you're going to send it to your social media folder. All right. The next thing is file yes.
May I ask a question before you get off file, before you get into out of export location?
Yep.
If you have checked off put in a subfolder, does it make you put in a subfolder when you export it, or will it just put it, you don't know where?
All right. So what it's going to do is, what I have this one, it says social media. All right. And if I say put into a subfolder and I say call it Facebook. All right. If that folder is not already there, it will create it. If it's already created, it will use that and put it in.
But if you've selected it, but not put in a subfolder, what happens when you try to export it?
If I say that again,
Like say you hadn't typed fakes post, but you had checked it off.
it will probably ask you to name it.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever tested that. That's a good question. Good question. It will probably ask, it'll probably prompt you for a name. You know what? Let's try it. I'm going to check it and I'm going to leave that blank. We'll see what happens. All right. Oh, and one last thing I almost forgot. After it exports it, all right, if it encounters a duplicate name, how do you want to handle it? All right, and that's what this is. Ask what to do, or choose a new name for the exported file, or overwrite it without warning, or just skip over it. All right, so you have these options. Okay, I usually say ask what to do. It'll bring up a dialog box, little warning, little bing, says, uh-oh, I've encountered a problem. How do you want me to handle this? And it's I then handle it on a per case basis, building in a checks and balances. Okay. I don't think I will ever use overwrite without warning. I don't want to take that risk. Okay. All right. The next one is file naming. This one has a lot of options available for you. There's a lot of ways of customizing an export. All right. Now, I've said it in the past. I tend to be relatively lazy about certain things. All right. And by mean is that I don't go, oh yeah, whatever. No, what I mean is I will let the automation do the work for me so I don't have to think about it. The less I have to think about certain automated stuff, the more I can concentrate on more important things. All right. So what I tend to do is just give it a custom name. All right. And what I'll normally do is I'll say Unitas Photography. All right. And then append the original file number. Okay. So when you take a picture, your camera will give your file a 4-digit number. All right. And it'll be like NEF underscore 1234. Okay. And then that 1234 moves up a number on the next frame and the next frame and the next frame and so on. When it gets to 9999, it will round back to 0001. Okay. I tend to keep that 4-digit number as a reference. Or when I spit out my export, at least I have that 4-digit number that I can refer back to the exact frame I shot. All right. And we all understand we take multiple shots of the same subject. All right. Exploring our composition, exploring our exposure. All right. So we may have 3, 4, 5 images that look similar. Okay. So having that 4-digit number helps us identify the exact frame we took that export from. So I like that particular feature. All right. But for my exports, I want to include some kind of branding. All right. Again, this is going out on the internet. All right. So I'll brand it with my company name. All right. So the file name, like Facebook strips out the metadata. What they don't, they do. They also change the file names. But if that file name is retained, at least my name is somewhere on that file. All right. Hopefully that made sense. Okay. All right. And then it has this, big decision. Do you want the extension to be lowercase or uppercase? Do you want JPEG to be uppercase or JPEG lowercase? Big deal. Why? I don't know. All right. So this is pretty straightforward. All right. But where it says rename to, if you go all the way down to the bottom where it says edit, all right, it brings up a nice little dialog box, all right, that you can populate with all kinds of information. All right. So let's say I have 10 images that I want to rename client name 1 of 10, 2 of 10, 3 of 10. I can do that. I can do custom text, all right, sequence number, all right, all right, so I can go like, for example, custom text, which would be, the company name, sequence number, all right, and then how many digits. All right, 1 digit, 2 digits, 3 digits, all right. It's only 10 images, so I'm going to do sequence 01, insert, all right, of, space, of, and then total, all right, 01, all right, done. So what it'll give me is company name 1 of 10, 1 of 30, however many you're kicking out. All right, so this is highly customizable. You'll want to play around with it according to your needs. All right, so that's something that you can explore. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to keep it custom name, original file number. All right. The next one is if you're dealing with video. I don't use Lightroom for video. Why anybody would use Lightroom for video is beyond me. I skip that. All right. Next one is your file settings. All right. Not only can you spit out a JPEG, you can also spit out a Photoshop document, a TIFF file, a PNG, or a digital negative, which is, like I said, Adobe's RAW format, open source RAW format, or whatever original format you're in. So if you're in Nikon, you have your own extension. For Canon, it's CR2, Canon RAW 2, NEF, all those extensions. You can keep the original RAW extension, okay? You can set the quality, all right? Now, the quality, in this case, with JPEG, it refers to the compression, all right, the data compression of the JPEG, all right? The bigger the number, the less compression that the file is run through, all right? Meaning that at 100%, whatever color designator is on the RAW file, it will have the equivalent JPEG color designator on the JPEG, all right? When you start adding compression, what it does is it analyzes the original and says, well, this group of blue pixels are all very similar, so I'm going to make all those a block of the same color. All right. That's how it reduces file size. A rough estimate is anywhere between 60 to 80% compression. You really don't see much of a loss. All right. It means you're not going to notice a big difference between something at 60% compression and 100% compression. You would really have to do a lot of pixel peeping in order to really notice the differences. Okay? When you start getting below 60 is when you'll start seeing the stair-stepping effect on color bands, and it starts looking a little horrendous. All right? However, if you want to make sure that nobody steals your images for print use, go ahead and add, that 50 to 60% compression, And if they try to upscale it and print it, it's just going to look horrible. They won't be able to use it for print. So that's a good tip. Okay. So this is where you would adjust your compression quality. And of course, what color space are you exporting on? All right. For social media, we're going to use the default sRGB. It plays well with all monitors. You lose a little bit of color data, but you're guaranteed that it's going to display nicely on everybody's monitor, whether it's at home or on their cell phone. Okay. The other thing you can do is you can limit your file size to a very specific file size. Now, this also tends to be a little bit of a hangout. Back in the day when bandwidth was at a premium and people were sending images, over the internet, usually like press photographers or companies that had a limit on their bandwidth of what they can receive, they may say, hey, limit it to 100 kilobytes, limit it to 150 kilobytes, all right, limit it to 20 kilobytes, all right. This is where you would set it there, all right. Nowadays, with high-speed internet, this tends to be pretty much ignored, okay. All right, so in this case, I'm going to keep it JPEG sRGB at 60% compression. All right. Then we go to our image size, and here we have a few alternatives. All right. If you leave this unclicked, all right, if you leave this unclicked, it's going to export at whatever resolution your image is in Lightroom. Whatever the finished cropped resolution is, it's going to export it 1:1. All right. Like I explained earlier, most screens will not show a 3000 wide pixel image. It will reduce it down to 1920. All right. So I usually resize, and I tend to resize whatever the long edge is. I will resize to 1920. All right. Now, again, you say, well, Facebook never, ever shows an image at 1920. Neither does LinkedIn. Neither does Instagram. So I don't need that high a resolution. I'm going to drop it down to 1200 pixels on the long edge. 1200 pixels will almost fill up your entire screen. If people cannot appreciate your image at that size, they're really not interested in your image, okay? All right. And then the resolution is where you will set it, whether it's for screen or for print. For screen, most screens are typically 72 or 96, okay? Some of the Retina screens, some of the handheld screens on tablets and stuff are at 150 dots per inch. But I find that because those screens are a little bit smaller, even the 72 DPI or PPI works well. All right. If you're exporting to print, then you're going to want to put something like 250, all right, 300, all right, according to what it is you're printing out to, all right? Okay. All right.
Hey, Doc,
yeah.
does that, with the 72 DPI, will that stop people from grabbing your image off of Facebook and printing it as their own?
Nope, absolutely not. A 1200 pixel wide image at 72 PPI, I can very easily print out a 4:6 image and make it look nice. I can print out an 8:10, but you're going to see some pixelation. All right. So does it stop people? No, not technically. All right. Will they get a good print out of it? Yeah, probably only at 4:6. But really, what can you do with a 4x6 nowadays? Right? Okay.
Hey, Doug,
Yes.
what do you recommend for like your camera club competitions that are projected on the screen?
1920 by 1080.
With the
Right.
resolution?
Yep. Yeah, because most well, depends on the quality of their projector.
Hold it a minute. It depends on the group.
I was talking resolution, not size.
Okay, I see. Yeah. It depends on what they're using to project.
They have told us for North Haven, they have told us 72 DPI. Now, if we ever get back into the church, the judges have monitors now that they look at and not that projector.
Right.
And it's much better. So each judge is looking at a calibrated monitor. So 72 is good. And of course, it's online now, so 72 is good for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill.
However, if they ever go to a 4K, that value will change.
I don't think that's
Well,
gonna happen.
actually, yeah, maybe. Well, the 96 DPI is used by some monitors. All right. I know some Mac monitors that are at 96 DPI, not 72. All right. However, it usually doesn't matter because on screen, it's a pixel per pixel translation. All right. So it's usually the size that matters, not the resolution for most screen displays. Okay. If you take this at 1200 72 DPI or PPI, I should say, and throw it up on a 4K monitor, your image is going to look like a postage stamp. Okay. If you take this and throw it onto a non-HD monitor, one of the eye monitors, which is 720 by 640, your image will actually be outside the bounds and will need to be reduced down. So it really is dependent on what the club is using. All right. But most clubs are projecting to a screen or looking at it on a monitor. 72 DPI is more than adequate. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Yeah, we're and I'm using DPI and PPI interchangeably here. I shouldn't be. It's actually pixels per inch. Okay. Where that makes a difference is when it gets translated for print. All right. The density in print is a lot more. All right. If I were to print at 72 dots per inch, I would have a very soft, very fuzzy image. Okay. Unless I'm printing to a billboard, which I've done. I've printed to a billboard at 25 dots per inch. And it looked beautiful. It was huge. All right. Output sharpening, I usually keep it at the default sharpen for screen standard. All right. Just realize that usually you're taking a large image and you're reducing you're reducing the resolution from 4,000 pixels down to, in this case, 1,200 pixels. So we're losing a lot of data. And when we do that, we tend to gain a little bit of sharpening by default. And we're gaining contrast by default. All right. So I don't want to add any more. I just want to keep it at the standard screen sharpening. Okay. The next one is metadata. All right. Hopefully what you're doing is on import, you are populating your metadata with at least your name, your copyright information, and if you have a public website, your website information, okay? You can tell it to keep that information on export. This is the warning I have in this particular situation. A lot of cameras have built-in GPSs. All cell phone cameras have a built-in GPS. That information automatically gets written to your metadata. All right, so if privacy is a concern, all right, especially if you're taking photos around your house and you got that nice stereo, that nice large screen TV, all right, all that good stuff, and you're posting it on Facebook, all right, you don't want some ne'er-do-well checking it out and say, hey, look at that nice large screen TV on this photograph. According to their Facebook status, they're going away out of town on this date. Let me look up and see if they have their location data embedded in that photograph. Oh, look at here. Here's their GPS location. Let me pull it up on Google Maps. Hey, it's right in town. Guess who we're going to visit when they're out of town? All right? You don't want that. So I usually say strip out all location information. Okay? You don't want that stuff going out there. Okay? And then, of course, if you're exporting anything that deals with keywords, you know, you might want to keep your keywording that you build in. This is mainly for people who upload to like stock sites where keywording is important. All right. However, if you're uploading images to your website and SEO is a concern, you want the appropriate keywords in your images that you're uploading to your website, because that will help your SEO and the whole 9 yards. Okay, so that's where you would put it there. All right. The next one is a watermark. Do you want a watermark? Yes or no? All right. I've already explained I have a love-hate relationship. I usually hate watermarks because they tend to get in the way. However, for Facebook, I will put a watermark. Okay. So you have a drop down, and you're going to notice that I have some custom watermarks already built in here. Okay. But you have a couple of default ones. All right. A simple copyright watermark just adds a text copyright symbol and then your name, whatever is, you know, registered to your Lightroom account. Or you can edit it. If you click on the edit, all right, it's going to bring up this dialog box, and you can create your own copyright information. All right, so Unitas Photography, all right, and it will place a text-based watermark. All right, and from here, if you want to use a logo, you can do that. However, it has to be either PNG or JPEG. My transparent, all right? So you would create that in Photoshop, click choose, and you can pull it in, all right? Or you can just keep it text-based. And text-based, you can pick out whatever font style you want to use, all right? Whether it's regular, bold, italic, whatever. Okay, and then where do you want to place it? All right, left justified, center justified, right justified. Okay, and what color? All right, this is something that you're going to want to play around with. All right. Often what I'll do with a text-based one, I'll create two similar ones. One with a white or a very light color and one with a darker color. So that way I can judge on a per image basis. If the background's a little bit dark, I'm going to use my light watermark. If my background is light, I'm going to use a dark watermark. Make sense? Okay. Or what you can do is create one that handles both. Okay. In this case, I have a white background, and I'm going to drop in a, let's see if I can place this up here where you can see it. Oh, and I can spell. All right. You can create a drop shadow, okay, and you can offset it so that way the darkness of the shadow will work on a light background, but the white of the lettering will work on a dark background. So you can create one that works, on both. All right. What I hate are watermarks that get in the way. Please don't be one of those. It takes away from the enjoyment of the photograph. All right. Now, I'm going to get a little bit on a soapbox. A lot of people says, well, I put it there so nobody steals my image. Let me tell you. One, nobody wants your image. Yeah, I know. It's harsh. Secondly, if somebody wants your image, you know how easy it is to remove a watermark? I can do it in 10 minutes in Photoshop. So it doesn't prevent people from stealing it. What it does do is it prevents people from enjoying your image. All right. So put it where it's going to be the least obtrusive. All right. Don't plaster it large across the middle of it. All right. Once you have it, then you can go ahead and click save, give it a name, and it will then populate here. All right. All right. And in this case, I have my United Photography logo lower right. Okay. So it'll place it in the lower right. I also have one that places it on the lower left. So again, naming conventions that lets me know what it is that I am attaching. And I have one where it's my signature, not my business account. It's my signature, left or right. Okay. So let's do one of those. Once last one, post-processing. After Lightroom kicks out the export, how do you want to handle it? All right. Oftentimes, when Lightroom puts out the final image, I am still somewhere in my workflow. I need to continue that workflow to the end. And that usually means uploading that image to my social media site. So once it does the export, I usually say, hey, open up that folder where you place that image in my Explorer, so that way I can then take that picture to the next step. Okay. However, you have other options. You can send it to Photoshop. All right. You can send it to a different program. All right. That it may be a non-Adobe program. You can send it to a program. All right. Or some other application that you can designate. Okay. Or you can say do nothing. Okay. I usually say show and explore because when it spits it out, I want it popped up so that I can take it. All right. When I am done filling all that out, I now go back to the left side, come down to the bottom. All right. Down here. And it says add. What I want to do is I want to take that preset and I want to add it. Okay. I'm going to give it a name. All right. Facebook. All right. Facebook. Keeping with my same naming conventions, I'm going to go 1200 pixels because it's reducing it down to 1200 pixels. All right. And I'm watermarking it. So for me, branded, and I can spell, branded makes sense. All right. Or you can say watermarked. All right. Whatever naming convention works best for you, makes sense, allows you to recall what it is that that preset's doing. All right. And then where on that left side do you want to put it? You have all these folders. Okay. I happen to have a folder called social media already existing. I'm going to place it in there. If you're creating this new, fresh out of the box, then you will say a new folder. It's going to ask you to name it. Just name it social media. And then you'll have a depository for all your presets for social media. All right. And then we create. There it is right there. Okay. Now I'm going to cancel out of this because if I right click, come down to export, here are all my presets. And here's the one that we just created. Facebook, 1200 pixels, branded. I click on that. You'll see all the way up here. All right. Kicks it out, opens up my folder, and there it is. All right. Now you notice that there's no 4 digits after it. Okay. And that's because there are no digits in the file name. All right. I had renamed this folder or this image, and I got rid of that 4-digit extension. So it didn't keep that 4-digit extension. All right. Oh, that's easy. I can just go there and just put in church. All right. And I'm done. Now I can go to my my browser, open up Facebook, say, here you go, post it to Facebook, and I'm done. Workflow's finished. All right. Any questions?
So it didn't prompt you if you wanted to put it in a subfolder, so now we know what happens.
Oh, that's right. Yes, you're right. It didn't. I forgot about that.
There's
Thanks.
no watermark. There's no watermark on the top.
No, I didn't put the watermark on the top.
Okay.
Let's see where. Yeah, it didn't. And it probably, all right. So in this case, I probably don't have that watermark anymore because I've been messing around with my system. All right. So that lower left, lower right signature is probably an old preset that doesn't have the attached PNG file. All right. So here in this case, we said, oh, there's an issue. It didn't brand it. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll leave it there. I'm going to close this, come back, export, come back to my export dialog box. All right. Top of the list. Okay. I'm going to find it. All right. I'm going to come here to my watermark, and it says it's supposed to be putting in this watermark. All right. And there's an issue. So let's look it up. Edit watermarks brings up the dialog box. All right. It's supposed to be an image. All right. And it's blank. So obviously it didn't find that image. So there's my problem. It's the root image for my watermark is missing. Okay, so I can go choose. I can go. Let's see. I didn't even know where I would have put it. Okay, more than likely, assets, Adobe. Custom assets, maybe. Who knows where I would have put it? It's long gone. All right. I would navigate to a folder that has an image. Okay. Let's see. There we go. I'll use this one right here. Choose mini logo. All right. And there it is. All right. Lower left corner. All right. And it's saying keep it proportional. All right. And it's giving it a 50% opacity. Let's bring that up to 100%. All right. Because it's a PNG, there's some transparency behind it. Okay. All right. And it's going 5% in from the corner, horizontally and vertically. All right. And then I go ahead and say save. All right. It's asking me to save it. So I'll put Learning Photography with Duck logo. Okay. Create. There it is. It repopulated it here. Now, because I've made a change, I need to save that change. Okay. We now need to go back over to the left side, find our original preset. We're going to right click, if I can get my pen working, and update with current settings. Update with current settings. Okay. Now, when I export, it's going to run the task up here. It's going to open it up. All right, double click, and there's my my watermark. Okay. All right, so you can modify, you can alter and make changes as needed. All right. And as you can see, I never updated those two watermarks. I lost the source image files probably a long time ago, and I never updated it. So it's good business running these workshops. I get to see where my system has collapsed a little bit on me.
Doug, were you able to answer Joe's question where you checked?
Yeah, it didn't do anything. Just kicked it to the default, the default root folder. All right. However, if I want to change that, I can go back to my export location. All right. And I can say choose folder later. All right. Choose folder later. All right. And then it'll bring up a dialog box and it'll prompt me to say, hey, what folder you want me to drop this into. All right. I'm not a big fan on that for the majority of my presets because I know exactly where I want my presets to go. So I at least dump it into the root folder. Okay. So I usually go to a specific one. But if I want to put it into a specific subfolder, you will need to name it. Okay. And like I said, it will look for this folder that says social media. All right. That folder should be already existing on your system. Okay. The put into a subfolder. So if I put one here and I call it, let's say FB for short. Okay. If it does not find a folder called FB, it will create it. All right. If once it's created and it finds it, it'll just use it. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. All right. And later on, if you say, you know what, I'm done using that preset, you can right click on it. All right. You can rename it. You can delete it. All right. You can export your presets if you want to share it with people. All right. Or if you use Lightroom at work and at home and you want to bring, presets from home to work or work to home, you can always export them. All right. And it tends to be a nice thing is if you want to create a backup as well. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this one because I don't need it. I already have one. All right. My generic social media one. All right. Any questions? I know we covered a lot in this particular lesson. So any questions? No? No questions? We did good, huh? All right. So you have the worksheet. It's downloadable. Okay. Go ahead and fill it out. That'll give you a clue of where your images need to go. That will help you organize your folders. It will also help you determine what sizes you need to export to. All right. My default size tends to be either 1920 by 1080, which is HD format, or 1200. All right. Anything below that tends to be very end specific settings. You know, like for example, my blog uses inline photos. I don't need those photos to be huge, so I limited the size down to 800 pixels because it's in line with text. Okay. Avatars, obviously, a lot of sites say, hey, upload your photo that you want to use for your avatar, but it has to be this size. All right. And I find that 180 and 600 tend to cover just about everybody online. Okay. Whether it's Facebook or Pinterest or LinkedIn or, Google, Yahoo Mail. All right. You'll find them all. Okay. Alrighty. If anybody encounters any problems along the way, feel free to drop me a note on the Facebook group. I'll be more than happy to help you out. All right. And as usual, this episode is being recorded. It'll be uploaded to YouTube. You can always refer back to that as well. Okay? So no questions, huh?
Nope.
All righty.
Not for the moment, anyway.
Not for the moment.
Yeah, I export all the time, so I'm pretty familiar with that.
Yeah. Okay.
I like to have my photos at 100%. Does it really make any difference whether I'm doing 100% or 80%?
File size.
Yeah.
That's really the only difference.
Okay.
And it's bandwidth at this point. It just saves on bandwidth. Mm-hmm. So my recommendation is, like, if you have a portfolio site and you're uploading your images at 100%, okay, the difference between 80% compression and 100% compression, image quality wise, is negligent. Anybody looking at your images on a computer screen will never, ever notice the difference between the two.
Okay.
Where they will notice is if they have to go, oh, Jesus, this photo's taking forever to load. Okay? That's the difference.
My only concern is with competition. We have it where if it's a portrait, it can't be any more than 1,400 pixels long, or if it's portrait, it can't be any higher than 1050, and it has to be less. It has to be 1K or less.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'm doing texture. I'm doing textures, and I'm doing effects, and that takes more than 1K.
Yes.
So if I bring it if I bring it to 80%, I'm not really going to adversely affect my photo.
No.
Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. All right. So digging a little bit deeper into that. All right. I would say it also is somewhat dependent on the image. Okay. For example, a landscape image that has a lot of texture, you can export at 60 without a significant noticeable loss of image quality, because there's a lot of texture to hide any color data loss. All right. Again, what we're looking at is with this compression is the software is looking at color data, and it's saying, okay, we have 16 million different colors to pick from. All right. So at 100%, we have that full 16 million palette available to us in a JPEG. All right. So we can have this green next to this green that's only 1 point difference off. All right. This is 158. This is 157. Okay. Are you, as a human, going to be able to notice the difference between 158 and 157?
No.
Never in a million years. How about 157 and 167? Probably not. However, all right, if we get enough of those together and say, okay, these are all within 5 points of each other, we're just going to make them all the same. And in that respect, we're gonna gain 0.02 kilobytes of space. All right. When you analyze the whole entire image and you group all these, all right, that's going to make a significant difference in file size savage. All right. You'll be able to save some data space. So instead of being 1.5 kilobytes, you can get it to 1.2. All right. And then if you tweak it a little bit more, you can probably get it to the 1. All right. Now, that's with something with a lot of texture. Now, all of a sudden, you have a photo of a blank wall with a person standing there, and there's a gradation of light to dark. All right, because there's light coming in the window, light to dark, and through the window, all you see is a nice blue sky. All right, and it's brighter at the top than it is at the bottom. All right, at this point, you're going to need to be a little bit more clinical about it. All right, because if you compress too much, then all of a sudden that nice gradation of blue will start looking like bands of color. That nice gradation of wall from light to dark will start getting bands of color. All right. So you have to kind of be careful at that point. All right. So that's why it's very image. It's determined by the type of image. All right. Flat color tends to be a little bit more problematic than something with a lot of texture. All right. So
I have a question about that then. If you determine, say, your longest edge, number of pixels, say 1200, that's still separate from that. That doesn't determine the quality. You have to determine each separately.
Yeah. The quality is in the algorithm of converting those ones and zeros into file. All right. So again, it goes down to that difference between two color points. All right. This color point, it's 101101. This color point is 10100101. It's that one. This one's a 1. This one's a 0. All right. You're never going to notice a difference. Okay. However, the file size starts getting noticeably smaller when you start grouping things together into similar units. Okay. Where I wouldn't do that is if it's going for print. All right. Because why would you want to introduce banding? All right. At that point, you want to kick it out to your highest resolution at the best resolution, 100%. All right. And at that point, even if you have control, kick it out as a TIFF instead of a JPEG, because you're going to get better quality. You're going to get a larger color space. All right.
If I'm very fussy about my photo, I will save it as a PSD. Especially if I'm using layers and I mark the layers, and I may want to change things at some point. Case in point.
I see. When you're editing in Photoshop, kind of thing.
Editing in Photoshop. Yeah.
Oh no, we're talking about exports.
Exporting. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The end results. Okay.
But I would use if I were. I don't use Lightroom that much. I use it a lot for exporting, because somebody asked me to upload pictures to a meetup group every time we have a hike, and these pictures are, of course, big pictures, even though it's a handheld camera, and even though it's a pocket camera, and as you know, it takes forever to upload pictures to Meetup. So of course I size them down to 1024, and I've been using 100% compression. I'll use 80%. And what's even worse about Meetup is if you're looking at pictures on a cell phone, and if somebody has just gone and uploaded a regular cell phone picture or a a pocket picture, the pictures are kind of big, and when you go from picture to picture, it takes forever for the pictures to show up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because now what's happening is the back end at Meetup has to resize that image down to something that they can present on your device. So all the work is being done on the back end, which means you on the front end is like, oh my God, Jesus Christ, it's taking forever. All right. And what does that say about the person who posted the image? It says, oh, I'm dealing with an amateur here. They can't even properly process an image. All right. Now, in all seriousness, Bill, I know, yes, you take your photography very seriously. All right. The quality that you put into it plays a big role. But if the quality of your image isn't required by the end user,
that's true.
You're just doing more work than you need. You know, nobody is going to appreciate that except you. You know, yeah, you have a group shot of all the hikers that went on the recent group meetup. Okay, you spent time editing beautifully and getting everything and spitting it out at a high resolution, 100% compression, and people are going to go, oh yeah, that's us. Okay, and then they're going to go off to the other. Nobody's going to appreciate it. All right. So, just balance it out. All right.
I'm just trying to show off that I'm better than the average photographer. I mean,
you can do that. Absolutely. Yes. But only on the images that are worthy of that. A group shot is not worthy of that.
No, I'm fussy about what I post. There's one guy, he'll give me 40 pictures to post. He just, I may take 40 pictures, but I will post only 6 or 7.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the same, with with the event photos that I do, all right, I'll take hundreds of photos. Let's see, where we go, DVCC. There's the recent ones. Okay, all right. Really lousy day. All right. Harsh light, hard shadows. I took 170 some odd pictures. 67 of those did not make it. All right, 107. All right, out of those 107, for editing. All right, why? Because nobody is going to appreciate that level of attention. All right, all these images are edited just in Lightroom, and that's it. Okay, and all I do is I normalize. All right, I highlight faces so that people are identifiable. All right. Because I love my clarity, I edit it to how I like my images to be edited. And if people don't like it, that's too bad. Okay? So, and even then, I have a couple of repetitions. These two, right? This one and this one. They're very similar. Okay? I don't care. I uploaded both of them, If people use them, they use them. If they don't, no big deal. But I did not kill myself in the editing. All right. I did a lot of bulk editing. All right. Where I will take, 1, 2, 3, 4 images, that are similar and, make my adjustments. All right. Make my job easier. Okay.
One thing I didn't realize that you did tonight, what I do is I highlight all the photos I want to edit, and then I want to export, and then I click the export button. I did not know you could take a picture, take a series of pictures, and right-click and export that way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So normally, like for example, this was a little gathering of business people. Local Chamber of Commerce. All right. So I'll go in. Obviously, the first thing I do is I weed out what I want to edit, what I don't want to edit. All right. In this case, my keepers were greater than my throwaways. All right. I only threw 67 images away. Okay. I'll go and edit them all the way I want. And then I'll do a Control A, select them all, click, export, and then I have my events gallery export. And I'll click on that, and it kicks them all to one location. All right?
Hey, Doug?
Yeah.
I want to thank you. I'm running out of battery here, so I'm going to be disappearing. But
no problem, sir. Always a pleasure.
John.
Yep, we'll see you, Bill.
Hey, Duck, I have a question. Can
Yep.
you put one picture in export? There's just one thing I'd like you to go over again.
Okay.
For the screen.
Correct.
What about if it's for a print?
All right. So for print, you'll want to match your export to your color profile to your printer. All right. And at that point, your printer profile will get brought into Lightroom. You can edit within your printer profile.
Okay, I do not have a photo printer here. I rarely print, so I take it to a print place. I take it to the guy. I either take it to Milford if I'm in that area, or I take it to the guy in Hamden. I forget his name, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Ross Imaging or something like that.
Right.
So I take it into a place to get it done. And
Yeah,
it comes
so-
up to it's sRGB, but it comes up to my satisfaction.
Yeah, so sRGB is probably the smallest color space. The next one would be Adobe RGB. Above that would be your ProPhoto. And then beyond that will be your printer calibrated profiles,
Okay.
which you would add in other. All right. So what you would do is you would contact your printer and say, hey, send me your printer profile so that I can load them on my system. They'll send you the files. You put them into a folder. And then where it says other, you just go ahead and go to wherever. Like, for example, in my case, I have my a Canon MX870 hooked up. I can pull up any one of these color profiles. You know, I'd have to compare according to what paper I'm printing to and what the recommended profile is for that particular paper, and load it in and then export to that particular print profile. All right. And then that way, what it guarantees is that the colors that you captured get placed into a matching profile that's within the gamut of your printer. I'm using big words. Hopefully everybody kind of followed along with what that meant. All right. So what it's doing is it will subtly shift any colors that the profile says, all right, I have this blazing red that I captured or that I edited in my image. I brought the saturation up. I brought the luminance. It's this blazing red. Okay. And then you have this color profile that says, you know what? I'm gonna have a problem with that red. Okay. If you do not address it, it's going to fall outside of what I can print because I'm only using 4 colors. I'm using black, cyan, magenta, and blue. All right. So. Magenta, yellow, magenta, cyan, and black. Sorry. All right, and it says
I had to go look at my print. I had to go look at my printer.
Yeah. So it says with all those 4 colors, I can't match that. Okay. However, looking at this color profile and overlaying it onto this color profile, I see that it's very close to this red, which I can print. So I'll print it at this because it matches the closest. All right. So that's what the color profile will do for you. All right. And different printers have different profiles. Okay. So if you can match it the best to the printer that you're using, then you're going to guarantee that you're going to get the correct colors. Now, we'll take it one step further. If you color calibrate your monitor to your printer, you'll never go out of gamut in your edit. All right. And Photoshop has a gamut checker. All right. When you click on a color in Photoshop, you'll see 2 little icons. All right. One will have a little triangular warning sign. All right. With an exclamation point. And if you hover over it, it says color out of gamut. Okay. Whatever color profile is loaded into Photoshop at that given time. For me, it's usually sRGB because I'm editing for sRGB. All right. It'll warn me that, hey, you're dealing with a color that nobody's going to be able to see because it's out of my gamut range. All right. And then you can click on it and it shifts it into gamut and then you can move forward. All right. So now we're getting, into like some heavy duty advanced stuff, but Lightroom can most definitely give that ability to you for your prints. Okay. All right. I think I just made some head spin on this one.
Now, could you, in the future, at some point, be able to spend a little time on the print module?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely,
Okay,
yes, yeah. Actually, I should probably write that down. Otherwise, I will forget. Okay. It's been noted.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. That was some awesome questions, though, Bill. I appreciate it. So, any other questions before we go ahead and close up and log off? We're good? All right. So you guys got some work to do. Make some presets for your exports, so that way it'll make your workflow a little bit better.
And that way I'm not changing my my settings all the time. I
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's just it. You know, the presets are designed to make your life easier. All right. It takes things that you repetitively do and it automates it. Excuse me. It automates it for you. All right. Not only does it make it easier for you, but it also creates a consistency in your look. You know, so. All righty, folks. Thank you again for spending another evening with me.
Thanks, Doug.
I hope the new time works for everybody. You know,
yes,
it definitely
well.
Awesome. All right. So next week it's back to Photoshop. Oh, I got a question for you. Would you find it beneficial to do any kind of open critique where you submit an image and then I critique it to where, you know, I think it can use some adjustments or some improvements? Is that something you guys might be interested in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So maybe we'll put that as one of our events someday. We'll see where we can fit it in. All right. Okay, guys, be safe.
Thanks.
And
You too.
if you have
By
any,
the way, hey, before any of you go, I in the comments in the chat, I put a link to tomorrow night's presentation.
oh yes, yeah, absolutely. So go ahead and I accidentally clicked on it.
Yeah, no, that's tomorrow night.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and copy that so I have it for tomorrow. All right. And that's at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Hosted
yes.
by the North Haven Camera Club. All right. So if you're already in the North Haven Camera Club, you should already get that notification. But just in case, copy it down. If you're not and you want to check out Bill's presentation, it's pretty informative. It's insightful. So I suggest you give him a look.
Cool.
So, all righty, guys. Be safe.
Have a good one.
Have a good week. We'll see you next week.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt.
All righty.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Doug.
Thank you for watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.